Welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So this video here is part 4 on the 1970 C3 Corvette Stingray that we've done. The previous 3 videos have covered prep work, base coat and clear coat, and this video here is going to be including the polishing stage. So at the start here I decided to give you guys a look at the off the gun finish the next morning. So you can see it's hardened up enough to touch, and it still held a really nice gloss because I used the HS Clear. Now I made a quick mention in the previous video that I used the Concept HS Clear, and it really did take quite a while to fully cure. So as you can see there, it's dry enough to touch, so no dust isn't going to stick into it, but if you really push into it, your fingers actually do leave a little imprint there. And this was a couple of days after, so we painted it on the Wednesday, and on the Friday we're trying to give it a polish, and we just tried and it just did not work. Like, we spent hours and hours, my partner spent like best part of an hour just on the buff on that bonnet, and we left it overnight, and it basically most of it came right back up. So we ended up leaving it over the weekend. Monday it was still a bit tacky, but the Tuesday it finally just snapped and it was hard enough to buff. We were close to sanding the entire thing down using some MS Clear to cover it up and give us something that we could actually polish, but luckily enough it did end up going off. I'll definitely be getting in contact with the Concept reps and seeing what they have to say about it. If there's anything that I could have possibly done wrong, did I maybe put too much paint on or not enough reducer, or I'll tell them exactly what I've done. And before I go and do a Concept paint review and demo and go and badmouth their product, which every other single product I've used apart from that HS Clear so far has been really good. The base coats are real nice, the primers are real good, even that MS Clear is fine, so we might end up just going back to the MS if we can't figure out the issue with that HS, but I would like to move on to HS Clear. It's been quite a while since I've used HS Clear on a daily basis. Back in 2011 I did use the Glazerite 255 Clear, and using this clear here reminded me how good HS was just in the application side of things. So yep, we've got a drying issue, but application, it's actually miles ahead of the MS Clears, and I'll be going through that later. But anyway, I'll just mainly focus on the polishing side of things for this job. So it was a full cut and polish, and obviously denib on the front end. What you saw me use at the very start there was the Kovacs 75mm mini orbital sander, and I used that with 1500 grit sanding discs, and I sanded down all of the high spots, so any of those little lumps of dust and stuff that landed in the job. It wasn't quite hard enough for me to go and use the tungsten, so I decided not to. I just decided to give it a really good sand down with the 1500, and then continue on with the 2500 and the 3500 to smooth it right down. So here's a bit of a look at my polishing range. The Super C is the juice polish that I use. It's a really good cutting compound, cuts right into it, but it does leave you with a lot of swirl marks. So that's when I use that 3M Perfect It Swirl Remover, and I'll then go over the top of that with the Jelson T57. So I use a 3-stage cut and polish system, and I'll be changing the pads also between each stage. So for the cutting stage I'll be using this pad here, which is just a foam one, and for the polishing stage I'll be using the waffle pad on the buff as well, the black one that you saw just there, and this will be the final stage on the DA orbital sander with the black pad as well. So the black ones have got finer holes in them, so they'll leave you with less scratches and less marks behind. And to wipe off, I always use the Microfiber polishing cloths. I always just get them from Super Cheap Auto. They're the cheapest around. You can go and get some Maguire's ones, but you'll pay probably 20 or 30 bucks for one, whereas from Super Cheap you get a big pack of them. They're exactly the same for 20 bucks, and you might get 20, 30 depending on the pack that you buy. So you can see this entire car actually has been painted before. Someone's been there and they've had something that is pretty common, especially with black cars, which is a bit of memory coming back. So when they've sanded it down, they thought they've polished it up. After a couple of days, those sanding scratches have come back up and you'll be able to see them. So that's why we decided to get a really good Super C, that colour, right into the entire car. So I've gone over the entire car and removed all of those deeper sanding scratches and then continued on. Had it have not been so bad, if it just needed, say, like a bit of a rejuvenator, I might have gone for the Juice Q cut, which is sort of in between cut and polish. So it's good to bring cars up that are just a little bit dulled off, but they haven't actually got any deeper scratches in them. But as far as products and stuff like that go, you may be on the other side of the world and they don't even have the products that I've got over there, and vice versa. So you're really just gonna have to try a few different brands, find your favorite polishes, find what works with you. I've also found most workshops don't exclusively use one full system, say like 3M or the Juice range. You know, they might throw a little extra polishing that they think is perfect for the job, and they 90% of the time they do work together. It's not like a paint system where you're going to lose warranty if you go and use a different base coat over under a different clear or something like that. So the best way I've found to stop getting more of that memory coming back is actually generating a nice amount of heat into that panel. So I've got that buff fairly fast. This buff here is about 5,000 RPM it's set on, and I'm just heating that panel up nice and warm, and it's gonna melt that paint back in and get that gloss right back up. So I'm doing that over the entire car. I've left most of the footage out, but I've just put a bit of each stage in for you guys. And next up here is just a little bit of something that makes the day go a little bit quicker, a bit of fun. Kids, don't try this at home. I take no responsibility for anything stupid that you do with fire in your workshop, but if you're going to do it, make sure you've got fire extinguishers and buckets of water on hand. So next up, we'll be showing you guys a couple of the metal polishes that I've got. I've got the California Custom range here. They've got a deoxidizer for aluminium, which was that green stuff that you saw next to this purple stuff. And this purple stuff is pretty good too. So what I'm doing here is a bit of a demonstration at how it works compared to just normal automotive clear coat polish, the Super C, the Juice Super C. I did on the edge of that bumper bar, the right hand corner there, you can see it's already shiny, and this part I'm using the California Custom. Original Purple is the name of this stuff, and I just found it on eBay. It came in a kit for $50. But to be honest, it really didn't do much different at all than the Super C did. If you look at this bumper bar, well, this is going over chrome. It's probably a little bit finer, if anything, so it took a little bit longer to polish it up, but it got it to a slightly finer finish. But for a chrome part, to be honest, I probably could have saved myself a fair bit of money and just stuck with my Super C. Polishing up aluminium is where it really comes in handy, and next video on my VL may even include a little bit of the polishing up of the drop tank, so I've got some footage there. So polishing is one of those jobs that I think most painters hate because it takes you away from painting, which we love. But as time-consuming, tedious, and annoying of a job it can be, it's also extremely rewarding when you get results like I do on the final product of this car here. So just the first cut and polish and detail took me best part of a full day. We then gave it a good wash, left it for a couple of days. There was one or two spots that started to come back as swirl marks, so we got the orbital polisher over it one more time and then just gave it a final T57 glaze, and it finished it off really quite nicely. I'll take you guys through that T57 application at the end of this video. It's quite a good polish, it wipes off really easily, and it does fill up those scratches. I mentioned that at the start. So there's a bit of a before and after, even just on those rear view mirrors there, bringing them up quite nicely. When polishing, it's not unlike the rest of spray painting, I guess. There's a good saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. So between each stage, clean yourself off, clean your pads out, make sure you're using clean rags, make sure the car's clean before you even started. You may have noticed at the very start, I started with a damp chamois or a damp cloth to remove any dust, and it's going to remove any grime and stuff like that. And as you see me here, I've got the airline blowing off all of that dust and just wiping down all of the greasy stuff in between each stage, because you don't want too much cross-contamination. It's not going to be a big deal if you have a little bit of cutters left over when you're doing your polishing stage, but it's still not ideal. You also really don't want to be doing any polishing in the sun, if not just for blinding yourself, it's also going to make that polish dry too quick in that extra heat. So That's why I've got that door pulled down, you may have noticed that. This is the way I like to clean out my polishing pads. Just get the buff upside down, spin it up, and then get an air line and then just blow it out. So you're going to blow out any of the dust, because it will turn into dust of previous polish, and then that'll blow out and clean the pad out nicely. If it's really bad and it's all clogged up, then you might want to put a bit of car wash on it or something, take it out the back, and then give it a hose out, high pressure cleaner, or just run it under the tap or something. But if you do that, make sure you dry all of that water out, because I've found that the water will actually break down your final glaze and it won't do its job properly. So make sure there's no water in there before you do your final glaze, especially. I don't really like to use water in any of my polishing stages anymore. I was taught to use a little bit of water in the cutting stage, so in the first stage, but I no longer find it's necessary, and you just make a bit of a mess, and it also makes that cutters or the polish harder to clean off when there is water in it for some reason. This swirl remover here I'm using is the 3M Perfect It number 3 swirl remover. It's one that I have used my entire career. It's a great polish, and it's great for blacks, whites, any single color. If it was a lighter color, I would just leave it straight off with this. It wipes off nice. It will remove 99% of those swirls from the cutting stage. However, you will still see a couple on the darker colors, like the blacks, darker blues, any darker color. So that's why I finish it off with the T57 I was mentioning earlier on the orbital pad. You may have noticed when I do my cut and polishing, I like to put just a little amount onto the panel. You don't want to overload it. I had a guy come in and he's given us a hand on some cut and polish, and he's just put way too much on the panel, and it's just started cheesing up, and it just wouldn't polish up properly. So don't overload it. And look, you can apply it however you like. If you want to put it onto the buff pad first, I really can't see any difference in that. I've done this method by putting it on the panel my entire career. All I do to make it so you're not spraying that polish and cutters all over the place is just slow the buff down when you hit that patch. Put it in the center of the buff so it's not hitting the fastest area of the buff, being the outer edge of it. So you hit it with the center, continue on buffing, and it'll spread out nicely from the center because it's going to want to move outwards. So a bit more fire here for all you pyromaniacs out there.
That's how you do it. Yeah. Still on fire. Whee!
Back on with the job. Now I've got all the swirl removing stage done. Again, clean it down really well, get your airline. I even got it back out into the sun. Make sure there's no memory, because you don't want to go and do all your final 3 stages and then find out you've got to go back to the first stage again. So in between each stage, clean it off, check it in the sun, especially with a black car like this. And again, with this final stage, the T57, yes, it's a great one, but it's not the be-all and end-all. There are other ones out there that you can use, like the Meguiar's. They've got a great range. I like their Canuba wax. But with all these final stage polishes, you do have to be quite careful. If I was to use this, I would not go straight in the booth straight after this and expect myself to be able to pull off a good paint job, because it's going to have silicone holes all through it, and I know it, because they contain waxes and stuff like that, and just all this greasy stuff inside these final glaze polishes. The first 2 stages aren't usually so bad. It's more that final stage you really got to be careful with. Here's actually another reason why most of the time when I work in a high production smash shop, I tell the boss, I say, mate, find someone else to do polishing. Yes, I can do it, need be. On a Friday afternoon when you're really busy and you need to get those cars out, yeah, I'll do it. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm not wasting my time going in there polishing cars when you can pay someone else to do it for starters. My expertise is in the color matching, masking and painting application side, and also if I go over there and polish and then come back over this side and do paint work, it's actually going to contaminate my paint jobs, and it's really not worth getting me to do it when you look at it like that. So there you guys go. You can see how easily that T57 just wipes straight off. It dries nice and quick. You're not there forever rubbing at it to get it to actually come off like some of them. So you can have them looking nice, and then in the wiping off, you're actually creating more scratches. This is it. Once it still needed a bit more of detailing, but that was me just checking over it. After the final stage, I was pretty happy with it. As I mentioned before, we did let it sit for a couple more days and make sure nothing else is going to come through. Turned out we gave it one final glaze over the top of that with the T57, but all of the sanding scratches were taken care of, and we also cleaned out the inside of the car for the owner. The owner was totally wrapped with it. I'd definitely love to own one of these beautiful old girls. I had one of the earlier models of this as a toy car model when I was a kid, and always loved these cars, so it was definitely a pleasure to get the opportunity to work on one and restore it to its former glory. This car here had actually been in a front end accident, so the owner did all the fiberglassing on the front, took it into us to finish off to a respectable standard, something that he just kind of knew that he wouldn't be able to do. So there we are, doing a bit of a touch up over the entire car. Here it is when it's all finished off, looking $1 million. There was just a couple of things we were still going around finding here and there, giving it a bit of a wipe down. But it's one of those things, blacks are never ending. To keep it to look this good, you just about have to give it a hand polish once every month. And if it was my car, I probably would just get the orbital sander out like I did before, and just give it a T57, say once every month or two, and just keep it looking nice. Hope you guys really enjoyed watching this video as much as I've enjoyed making it. Be sure to check out my website, thegunman.net.au. I've got all my social media links in the description below. Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Vine, all that stuff. Now you've seen this video, get out there and paint some shit, guys. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.